Welcome to Viking Preparedness. I am Pastor Joe Fox. Today I want to talk to you about tribes. You know, when I say that word tribes, what do you think about? Do you think about the American Indians, you know, the Sioux, the Cheyenne, the Chippewa? Do you think about maybe tribes in the Amazon region, you know, recently discovered? Isn't that Eurocentric? Do you think about tribes in Africa, you know, the Maasai, right? Or maybe you think more modern, if you could call it that, tribes in Afghanistan, right? The Pashtun and all the other tribes that are running around in that area. Tribes, no matter where they are, even historically, you know, long ago, the Israelites, right? Tribes. They have many things in common. And that's what I'd kind of like to talk about a little bit today, is things that are in common with tribal culture, no matter where they're from or where they're located. And sure, you can nitpick. You can find, well, this tribe doesn't do that. Okay, but I'm talking about things they have in common. One of the things they have in common is they're led by men, right? There aren't very many women tribal leaders. What about Boudica? Yeah, right. I'm talking about things that are in common. They're typically led by men. And there's a hierarchy to things, and you know, it works its way up and down the chain of command, if you will. You know, maybe there's a village headman. Some tribes are huge, though. You know, tribes could contain many villages. Maybe it's a small tribe, so it's just one group of people. But there's typically a guy in charge, and that guy, at whatever level, is advised by a council of elders. You know, call it what you want. Different tribes call it different things, but they're advised. And so they sit around and they discuss things, sometimes at length. But decisions are made eventually by the tribal leader. There's not a lot of voting that goes on. You know, they don't call the village out and say, all right, we're going to vote on whether we're going to go on a buffalo hunt or not. All in favor, say aye. All not in favor, say nay. No. The village leader says, this is what we're going to do. And so if the tribe is going buffalo hunting, you're going buffalo hunting. Why? Because the tribe is going. If the tribe is going to war, you're going to war. Why? Because the tribe is going. You see, they put the tribe ahead of their own interests. And they don't really think about it. It's the way it is. You know, the tribe looks at, it's us against everybody else. I know many American Indian tribes, the name they had for themselves translated into the people. You know, it's us against them. We are the people, they are not. And so they do that. There's typically similarities, not even similarities, man, that's way too weak of a word. They all dress the same. They all look the same. You know, they have a culture that's tight. They all have a certain kind of clothing that they wear, or a headdress that they wear, or paint that they put on, or something like that. But when you look at them, you can say, yep, those guys are from that tribe. You know, guys and gals, right? Those people are from that tribe. And you can tell by looking at them, they are set apart. They are Kodesh. Right? In their own way, right? But you can tell who they're from. There's usually rites of passage, you know, whether you are, typically you're a kid and you're coming up into adulthood, whether you're male or female, there's typically rites of passage that say you are now no longer a child, you are now a full-fledged member of this tribe. And so they do those things. What else? They're warrior-based cultures. You know, they value those types of things, whether they're fighting a war or not. You know, the Maasai haven't been involved in a war in quite a long time. They're herding cows, but they're still warriors, and they think and act like warriors. And so there's that going on for them. You know, there's not a lot of time for watching MTV, right? And so those things are going on in tribes. What else? I talked about their culture, their leadership. They have roles. They have defined roles. And we think of tribes as primitive, right? I guess you could say they're primitive in that they have existed for a long time, but, you know, that doesn't mean that they're ineffective at what they do, which is kind of the point of this video. When we went into Afghanistan in 2001, I told my wife that we were going to leave Afghanistan and nothing was going to have changed. And she said, what do you mean? I said, man, the Russians have been there twice at least. The Brits have been in there and out, and Afghanistan remains. They see people come, they see people go, but Afghanistan remains. And it's because we, Western powers, do not know how to deal with tribes, let alone fight them. someday, depending on some of y'all's attitudes towards life and the new world order, being in a tribe might be a good thing. I'll tell you this. If times go bad, when times go bad, Tiawaki, the end of the world as we know it, that kind of thing, you are either going to join a tribe, form a tribe, get run over by a tribe, or destroyed by a tribe. But you're going to deal with tribes. And if you're not part of one, you're going to suffer. It is what it is. I mean, it's the way of things. You know, as civilization, as we call it, devolves, tribes are going to come to the fore again. And you know, we say these are ancient things, and they don't really exist in the 21st century in great numbers anymore, except for street gangs, motorcycle clubs, the United States Marine Corps, other military units. They're tribes. Those are tribes, man. You know, they're male-dominated cultures with leaders, and they look all a certain way, whether they're flying colors or wearing a headband or have a uniform on. They have a culture that's all their own. They have a language that's all their own. And they think and move as a tribe. The tribe is more important than the individual. The reason that Americans aren't real good at tribes, and most especially survivalists and preppers, is because of something that I guess you could say made us great, you know, really. It's that rugged individualism, right? I mean, we pride ourselves on being able to go and forge our way alone. But the reality is that ain't going to work. Not when civilization collapses, not when it is you against everybody else. You're going to need friends. You're going to need people who put the needs of the group above the needs of themselves. And to be in a group like that, you're going to have to think and act like the group, right? You are going to have to conform, right? Something else Americans don't like to do. We think we are nonconformist. We really are very conformist, but we think we're nonconformist. We think we're individuals. So start thinking about tribes. Start thinking about what your tribe would look like. You know, a lot of tribes, like I said, are based around family. You know, it starts with the household and then kind of grows from there. You know, in the South, and it could be in the North, I'm just not that familiar with the North of the U.S., there are still a lot of people who talk about kin. You know, that's my kin. That's his second cousin twice removed. But if you get in a fight with Bubba, you're going to fight me. You know, that's a tribal mentality. Now, they're missing a lot of things like, you know, hierarchical leadership and stuff like that. But I could see those types of families coalescing into a tribe. And you're either with them or you're not, you know. So maybe that's a place for you to start. Maybe you've got a group of buddies and you can start talking about that. But I encourage you to start looking at tribes. I encourage you to start looking about what makes them tick, how they run, how they operate, and then kind of place yourself in that. You know, in your mind, how would you fit into such a culture? If you're interested in this subject, we can go deeper into it. I can have more succinct thoughts, you know, that I actually write out in advance and we talk about. But yeah, the tribes, they're rising. I suggest you join one or form one or something. All right, I'll see you out there.